I'm pretty sure, or most of the vast majority of the audience, obviously people watching this channel, have somewhat heard of the whole ideology or the whole concept around the Great Replacement theory. And basically the ideology is predicated on this notion that it's an ethno-nationalist idea that stems from this notion that white Europeans are being sort of like replaced by people from the global south, and effectively it's a plot from the elite to replace white Europeans with people from from the global south, basically. Now, again, it's a theory, and the theory itself has been debunked many, many times by studies, by research, by evidence. Theory is not grounded in truth, it's just a theory. However, it stems from a 1973 a French author who obviously came up with the concept in 1973. Effectively, they call it the Le Grand Remplacement, basically, which is like the French word for a great replacement, basically. And he had argued that over time, ethnic Europeans, or generally by ethnic Europeans, he means white Europeans, are basically going to be replaced by a group of people from the global south, which obviously, again, is inaccurate. And somebody else picked up from where he left off in 2012, and it was a guy called Renaud Camus, French novelist and author. He also came up with the concept, and he's the one who's well known for this whole ideology called the Great Replacement theory, to be honest. And we have to establish fundamentally the Great Replacement theory is bullshit. Most European countries are still overwhelmingly significantly white. For example, we live in England. I live in England. England is about 86% to 87% white. It doesn't look like the white people are going to be replaced anytime soon. You go to France, for example, the ratio between ethnic minorities and white people is still high, meaning that the numbers significantly favor the natives, or should I say the white people. Like every European country that you go, then the numbers favor white people. So if the statistics favor white people, how are white people being fundamentally replaced by ethnic minorities? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. Obviously, if you look at the history of European colonization, the French author Jean Raspail, who is the one who coined the term the Great Replacement theory, or he called it Grand Remplacement, which is the French word for it, basically. He's argued that effectively there is a form of reverse colonization that is happening to people of European descent. I mean, to have the audacity to even say reverse colonization, it's like he understands and agrees that Europeans have invaded and colonized a lot of people, but he doesn't accept the notion of Europeans being colonized or subjugated by other people. It's like the double standards and the hypocrisy is concerning. In fact, a lot of these nationalist, ethno-nationalist people are also some of the people who are more inclined to take pride in European colonization. So like the same things that they're concerned about at home, their countries being invaded and their countries being colonized, they're more than happy to do that with other people. Like you go to Australia, the lands in Australia were obviously were stolen by the Europeans from the Aborigines in Australia. The same thing in New Zealand. They've done exactly the same thing to the Maoris in New Zealand, or by the Native Americans in Canada and in America, and places like Mexico and Central America and South America. Right, these places were forcefully taken by Europeans, and they forcefully, strategically replaced the ethnic minorities or the ethnic demographic that lives there. And today, they've created a false notion that they're being replaced, and then identified that replacement as a form of reverse colonization, which is just objectively, factually untrue. But even let's say, hypothetically, that Europeans were being replaced by a group of ethnic minorities, right? If you're a person that cares for karma and a person that cares about justice, wouldn't you argue that that is somewhat a good thing, right? Think about it, right? A group of people that have spent centuries oppressing other people, right? If you're a person that cares about justice, karma, you would think, well, you've spent centuries stealing from people. You spent centuries raping, oppressing, you name it, you've done it to people, Europeans. have done it to people. And then all of a sudden, they're having, like a demographic change within their countries. And some of them just can't comprehend the notion that maybe there might be a day potentially that they might be a minority, which is very unlikely, to be honest, unless they systematically, not at an individual level, but systematically stop giving birth. Then who knows? There might be a case where ethnic minorities might potentially take over, but that's not going to be now. Like, that's probably going to be somewhere in 500 years, approximately 500 years, but not anytime now. And that's arguing that, let's assume hypothetically that they basically are not giving birth, right? Maybe, yeah. And even then, it's going to take approximately 500 years for them to be replaced, right? So if we really delve deep to the key components of the theory itself, the Great Replacement Theory, some of the ways in which you can recognize the Great Replacement Theory is things like the rhetoric of invasion. So anytime you maybe potentially go on social media and then you hear terms like invasion, they invading our country, they taking over, invasion, the small boats are coming in, the immigrants are coming from Central America trying to invade. So that's one of the key components is the whole phraseology or the whole word of invasion, right? So anytime you hear that, it's somewhat closely linked with the Great Replacement Theory. And then there's also this idea of voter replacement, where there's an argument that powerful elites are trying to bring in a more submissive, a more docile electorate to places like America and to Britain to vote a particular way. So let's say allowing people from Haiti, for example, people from Mexico coming into America, and over time the demography will change. And a lot of these people might have a high inclination or proclivity to voting for Democrats as opposed to Republicans, right? That's one of the concepts of the Great Replacement Theory. And obviously, finally, anti-Semitism, right? This whole idea that, they're being replaced by Jewish people. And especially if you pay attention to the riots that happened in Charlottesville, Virginia in August of 2017, it was all built around the Great Replacement Theory. The riot itself, right, which led to one woman dying. But the night before the main riot happened, a group of white supremacists were walking around holding torches saying Jews would not replace them. So like one of the fundamental bases to, or key components or ingredients to the Great Replacement Theory is obviously the rhetoric of invasion, the idea that a group of people from the global south are trying to replace ethnic white or ethnic European people. And by the way, the concept itself is fucking bullshit, right? Nobody's replacing white people. Number two is obviously the voter replacement, that there's an electorate of minorities being created by elite liberals who are trying to replace the current demographic of voters in a given country. So more submissive electorate, basically. And finally, anti-Semitism, right? Without anti-Semitism, the whole Great Replacement Theory would not exist, because white supremacists see Jewish people as their biggest threat, right? So when the riots happened in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2007, August 2017, the whole movement was about anti-Semitism, effectively. So like we also have to acknowledge the consequences, or at least the evidence that we've got in terms of violence that was perpetrated by people that believe in the Great Replacement Theory. And one of them being in March of 2019, 51 people were killed across 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, by a white supremacist who believed in the Great Replacement Theory. 51 people were massacred who were Muslims across 2 mosques. And then on August 3rd, 2019, 23 people were shot and killed in a place, El Paso, Texas, because apparently the guy believed in the fact that there's too many Latinos in the area, and he didn't like that fact, and he believes that Texas is being taken over by Latinos. So he showed up at a particular supermarket and shot and killed 23 people. So the Great Replacement Theory is an incredibly dangerous ideology, and it takes understanding and knowledge to be able to recognize how harmful and impactful this ideology really is. And And I think one of the biggest problems that we have is that we generally have a proclivity to look at these white supremacists and then look at them from the perspective of, oh, these people are not a threat to any system, right? They're just overtly bigoted, but just ignore them and they'll go away. But actually, over time, you start to see that they become more emboldened and they become more powerful. And not only that, just recently, they've had their leader, they've had Trump elected, right? They cheered their final boss, right? And it's clearly not looking good, anyways, ladies and gentlemen. But I do want to understand your perspective on the whole ideology of the Great Replacement Theory. What do you think? Did you heard about it beforehand? Just let me know in the comment sections. And what's your overall take on it? Right, I'll see you later. Peace. Thank you.